Since this was your first straight-ahead narrative film, how did you get involved in the project, and what did you want to emphasize about this story as you adapted the Don Winslow novella?
So I think I thought if I was ever going to make a straight narrative or a Hollywood sort of scale movie,
Yeah.
it would have to be a little like the kind of movies that I want to watch that I feel have maybe sort of not disappeared, but like I'm not sure we're getting many of them offered to us in the theaters these days. So, and when I read the short story, I thought, oh wow, this actually has all of the elements to be one of those, you know. And I guess I'm harking back to movies that I saw. Like, I mean, I grew up, I guess, in the 80s and 90s, and I remember seeing things like, obviously, you know, Heat and Collateral, and then more recently, The Town. But then going back to probably things like The Sting and some of the Billy Friedkin films, you know, and I was like, where are they? And I think I saw that opportunity to, you know, bring people back to the cinema for something that delivered on all of those levels. But also I thought there was an opportunity to talk about slightly deeper themes, you know, which is about the haves and the have-nots and corruption and all of that stuff.
Great. So you were directing an all-star cast of different generations and no doubt different approaches to performance.
Yes.
In guiding the flow of the story, did you find you had to rein in the characterizations, or were you content with your cast's interpretations?
I mean, I think that is probably the purpose of rehearsal, you know, is that you calibrate everything. That, you know, what you don't want to happen is that you have big, fundamental kind of character questions and you're not getting into that until like the day, and you've got 150 people standing around and like, you know, and then you're having a big discussion about motivation. So really, most of our, you know, rehearsal, and that can take different forms. You know, it can just be a chat.
Yeah.
Was really about making sure that everyone is on the same page in terms of intention and like tone.
Yeah.
And so by the time we were on set, we were flying, really. I mean, that
Cool.
if you get actors of this level,
Yeah.
you know, it makes my job as a director easier.
Very good. The plot was a classic police procedural with a touch of human larceny and Columbo type techniques from Mark Ruffalo's character. What did you want to get right about police work that you didn't really see in other types of procedurals like this?
You know, I do a lot of research because I come from documentary. So a lot of what I ended up putting into the Ruffalo character, who's, you know, LAPD, robbery, homicide, was based on conversations with real either serving or former police officers, detectives. And, you know, I spoke to one person in particular who had left the force, actually transferred to Las Vegas. And he said part of the reason he did that was because he felt there was a huge amount of pressure on the numbers.
Yeah.
More than on community service, crime prevention.
Right.
So a lot of those things are, you know, it's all based in a lot of research, really.
Sure. So your collaboration with cinematographer Eric Wilson yielded some stylish use of cinema to emphasize the misadventures of the humanity involved in the case. As you were playing the look of the film, what did you know you wanted to do to set it apart?
I think I wanted it to just have a kind of gritty, real quality, but also be incredibly, I mean, cinematic, for want of a better word, that it felt like a big movie, that it had, you know, that we lit it beautifully. We put a huge amount of effort into designing a look that was somewhere between, you know, a kind of classic Hollywood movie that felt like it had scale, but also it is, you know, it's not so glossy that you're not kind of in it and able to recognize it as the real world, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that upside down thing that started it. I was impressed by the performance of Halle Berry, who seemed to take on the performance a little personally. Did you discuss the motivations of the type of woman on the brink she was portraying, emblematic of the movie industry and women?
Completely. I mean, interestingly, when Halle and I first sat down and she had read the script and she wanted to meet, and one of the things she said was, she's like, I don't just know how to play this woman, I've been her, and I understand her deeply. And she had actually had her own experience of being the director of her own movie not that long ago, and I think she encountered experiences of misogyny or kind of, belittling that she felt were familiar to what this character was experiencing. So yeah, I think she brought a lot of her own stuff to it. And also she was like, this is a story about a woman of a certain age that really needs telling now.
What was behind the casting of Nick Nolte as Money? Was it someone you were thinking about in developing the chemistry of the cast, or was it suggested to you from the outside? And how was your interaction with his technique?
Like when I think about those movies that, I grew up loving, I remember having a copy of 48 Hours on VHS, he was one of those legendary actors in that era. And, when we were thinking about his character, and it's not a huge part,
right?
But I was sort of saying, I feel like it could be like a kind of Nick Nolte type of actor. And then I think someone said, well, what's he doing? And, and if you don't ask, you don't get. So I sent him the script with a letter, and he read it, and he was like everyone, he was like, we don't get many of these kind of movies anymore. So he was like, yes, let's go.
This is a real American story to me, and you're obviously British. So when you're observing from the outside and then coming in, what was your, again, point of reference about America to create this multi-layered story?
Look, I love America, I love LA, but I've also had that sense where, LA is a place where there's such a pressure on status. And that can be quite all-consuming. And if you're not careful, it can push you into making decisions about how you want your life to be, which are not so much about your own kind of sense of self-worth. It's about deriving self-worth from how other people see you. And that was something that I it's a love letter to LA, but at the same time, there's also a kind of questioning of, that culture that pushes us to behave in a certain way. And if you allow that to drive everything, you might get to a point like these characters are at, where you're at breaking point and you need something to change.
Right. So you're also known for American Animals, the interesting combination of documentary and narrative. How did your previous documentary work inform your approach to American Animals? And what was one of the more satisfying moments for you as reality met the acting of the actual event?
In American Animals?
Yeah, in American Animals.
Yeah, I mean, that was a sort of experiment of sorts, in a way that I don't think anyone had necessarily tried to tell a true story in that way.
Right.
And I wanted to... Look, I've made a lot of documentaries, and I've produced a lot, and I've made docs for the cinema. And when you watch a really gripping documentary with a big audience, they are so hooked in.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, I think, is because they're not suspending disbelief, right? They know that these are real humans, and whatever happens is what happens in real life. So you're kind of like... Your bar for drama is lower because it's kind of extraordinary. And I suppose I wanted to make a narrative film with American Animals, but I wanted to borrow that thing that a documentary can do, which is to give you very deep skin in the game.
Yeah.
And because it was a story about a group of young men who cross a line that they should never cross, I think people were sort of found it captivating in a way that if you'd done it without the documentary elements, you would have been like, okay, yeah, good, fun story. But when you watch it with the real guys in it, you're like, holy crap, what is going to happen?
Now, finally, since much of your cinema storytelling background is about deception and robbery, what point of reference in Crime 101 was the portal to what connected you to the story, and how does that connection come out in the final result?
I think probably, you always look for a story that is going to be like a roller coaster ride, right? Like that you're going to be completely in it. You that kind of that need to know what happens next. And I think if you have that, then you've got a structure on which to start to build very successfully, and then you can smuggle in things that you're interested in, provoking people to think about.
Sure.
So I guess the portal or the kind of entry point is it's just a ripping yarn. You're just so in it. It's so compelling.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is, right, let's expand the characters, let's expand the story, Don Winslow's a genius storyteller. So I'm standing on the shoulder of a giant, and then I can only kind of, improve on it.
Sure. This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2026.